Hey there, welcome to the fusing and prep video for the Hiraeth series. We are going to start out today by retrieving our pocket panel pieces. And we're going to make some marks on the wrong side of our pieces that are going to indicate where to line up our stabilizer. So grab your ruler and line up 5/8 of an inch away from the outside edge and mark a line. We are going to do that on the side edges, the bottom edges, and the two straight top edges. I always skip marking my lines away from the curved edge because the straight edges are easier to mark your lines from. And also, if your stabilizer matches up with all of your straight lines, then it will naturally match up with this curve. And we're going to do the same thing for the other pocket panel. Okay, those two are done, and we are going to set them aside and retrieve our main panels, which look like this. We are going to mark 5/8 of an inch away from the edges, but only specific edges. These two edges here, the slanted edges here, and these slanted edges. Don't mark a line away from the very bottom, and don't worry about the curve at the top. Okay, as you can see, again, I did not mark a line away from the very bottom edge, and I didn't mark a line away from the curved edge either. But all other edges have lines, and we are going to repeat that on the second main panel. You don't see me do it here, but now is a good time to mark the center of the top curved edge of the main panel. Okay, both of those pieces are completed, and we are going to set those aside, and we're going to grab our side accents. Here are both of our side accent pieces. We are only going to mark 5/8 of an inch away from each of the side slanted edges. Once you've completed your marks, just like we did for the main panel, now is a good time to find the center of the top curved edge. Set those aside and grab the base. We are going to mark 5/8 of an inch away from the long straight edge. The base has these slanted edges on either end, and we're not going to worry about drawing lines away from those edges, just the long straight ones. Okay, and then we are going to mark 3.5 inches away from each of the shorter ends. And that is going to form a rectangle in the middle of the base. So 3.5 inches away from the short edge on this side. And there is our rectangle. Next, we're going to be fusing our stabilizer onto the wrong side of each of our pieces, in between the lines that we just drew. Now, one note that I make in the pattern is that thin and pliable vinyl or faux leather or cork or even leather is best for this bag, thin and pliable. And when it's a thinner material, my preference is to use Decova Light as the stabilizer. But I do mention in the pattern that if you're using a thicker material, a thicker vinyl, fusible fleece is really good for that as well, so it won't be too tough to turn the bag right side out at the very end of your construction. So with this bag, I'm going to be using Decova Light. So I'm going to line up my stabilizer in between the lines that I made and give it a quick spritz. And press. Once this is pressed for the Decova Light, you're going to want to set it aside for about a half an hour to cool before you start working with it. I am using a 320-degree press and I'm pressing for 8 seconds. If you're using a regular iron, that should be about the wool setting. Now note that when you're lining up the stabilizer for the main panel, the bottom of the stabilizer is going to extend all the way to the bottom of the main panel. So you're not going to have a gap like you do for all the other edges along the bottom edge. If I'm using fusible fleece, I like to use the same temperature for my press, 320. But I like to press it for about 10 to 15 seconds rather than 8 seconds. But you're going to want to make sure that your vinyl can handle that heat, so I would definitely check on a scrap of your material before you try. Now the base is a little different since this is Decoville Heavy that I'm using here. I'm going to be pressing this for about 10 seconds. Next here I have my 1 strap connector and my 4 handle connectors. And we're going to mark some lines along the long edges at 5/8 of an inch away from the edge. We're going to do the same thing to all 4 handle connectors, 5/8 of an inch away from the long edge. And if you're having trouble with the fractions on the ruler, just remember that there are 8/8 in an inch. So that means a half an inch is 4/8. And if you're doing 5/8, that's just 1 tick mark above half an inch on your ruler. Okay, my 4 handle connectors and my strap connector all have their lines drawn, and next I'm going to be fusing the stabilizer to the wrong sides of these connectors. Now, it's important to note that if you're using thicker vinyl or faux leather, this is an optional step, so definitely use your best judgment on whether or not you want to stabilize your connectors. I will say that I always stabilize my connectors because it helps for the hardware not to flip or spin, especially those D-rings that might want to flip upside down when you're carrying the bag. So the stabilizer just keeps that edge crisp, strong, and it also helps your rivet to grab onto the bag, which makes your connector super strong. Working with 1 handle connector at a time, I am going to fuse the stabilizer towards one end in between the lines that I drew, and I'm going to make sure that the stabilizer stays about half an inch away from the end of the handle connector, and I'm just going to make sure that's right in between those 2 lines. And it's okay to estimate here just about a half an inch. And this means that roughly half of the handle connector will be stabilized and the other half will not be stabilized. I'm just going to spritz that with water and press just like all the other pieces. And continue this on all 4 of the handle connectors. Next, we're going to fuse our strap connector, and we have 2 pieces of stabilizer for this and only 1 strap connector. We are going to fuse each of these pieces to the ends of the strap connector like this. So both ends of the strap connector are going to be stabilized and the middle is not going to be stabilized. In addition to the heavy stabilizer that I have on the base, I am also going to be fusing woven interfacing on top of that. This is SF101 and it is cut the same size as my exterior material. And I'm just going to fuse that in place. And what that's going to do is to help the Decoville Heavy not to lift when I'm working with the base, and also when I'm turning this bag right side out. And I'm really going to get these edges where the base stabilizer ends. Really going to fuse down those edges. And I'm going to let that sit. In addition to the stabilizer, I have fused my woven interfacing to the wrong sides of all my liner pieces. I have my 2 pocket liners, which are going on the exterior of the bag. I have my zipper pocket liner on the inside, my slip pocket liner on the inside, and my 2 liner panels here. If you're using waterproof canvas, you are going to want to omit this step because you won't be able to fuse the backside of the waterproof canvas. Next, I have my strap and my 2 handle pieces, and we're going to be marking a center line down the wrong side of all 3 of these pieces. And they should be 4 inches wide, so a center line is going to be 2 inches away from the long edges. And we're going to do this to all 3 pieces. Okay, all 3 of those pieces have a center line running down the wrong side. And now we're going to retrieve our slip pocket trim. And on the wrong side of this, we're going to mark a center line, and that's going to be about 1/2 inch away from each of the long edges. Additionally, on the back side of this, we are going to run a line of double-sided tape along each of the long edges. I'm using the Tanner's Bond permanent adhesive from Tandy Leather. I like this one the most because it's super sticky, so I can use a very narrow tape. I believe this is the 3/16 inch tape. And also I can tear it with my fingers. The Waywack leather tape is very similar, but I prefer this one because I can tear it with my fingers and I don't have to cut it with my scissors. This is what your slip pocket trim should now look like with 2 pieces of DST along the long edges and a center line. And we're going to set that aside so we can use it later. Next, on the wrong side of the zipper overlay, we're going to run 2 pieces of double-sided tape down each edge of the zipper window. Now, I like to make sure that my tape is sort of centered in between the outside edge and the inside edge of the zipper window on both sides. So that way it's going to avoid my stitches when we install this overlay. And set that aside so we can use it for later. Now that all of my pieces are fused and prepped, I am going to put them into bundles so that I can easily keep track of all my pieces, and I can work on each bundle at a time as I'm going through the different sections of this pattern. The bundles are outlined in the instructions. In the next section, we are going to be sewing up our straps, handles, and our connectors.